for AI-enabled campaigns here. And so with that, let's do a quick overview of the entire Meta Advantage suite of AI-powered solutions for advertisers. Inside the Advantage suite of solutions, there are two categories of solutions that you can choose from. So the first category is what we call our complete end-to-end solutions. And so Advantage Plus complete end-to-end campaign solutions, like the ones you see in front of us here, enable you to automate all of your campaign and are the most efficient way to reach your customers and achieve your campaign goals. So here, AI is applied across all campaign settings, so including audience targeting, including placements, including budgets. So essentially, we recommend that you use complete end-to-end campaign solutions when you have few or no hard business constraints. So what do we mean by this? Well, let's say that your goal is either to sell, or let's say your goal is to drive some kind of app event, whether that's an app install or an app conversion, or whether it's to drive leads. And so let's say that's one of your goals. And let's say you don't mind if your sales or your app event or your leads, you don't mind if they come from someone who's younger or someone who's older. You don't mind if it's coming from someone who's male or female. You don't mind if these people have any particular interests or demonstrate any online behaviors in particular. You don't mind if your ads are showing on Facebook or Threads or Instagram or Messenger or Audience Network, let's say. You don't mind if the person converting is converting on a video ad or a catalog ad or an image ad. If you just want to sell, or if you just want to drive some kind of app event, or if you just want to drive leads, then these complete end-to-end campaign solutions are for you. So if the goal is just to sell, or just to drive an app event, or just to drive a lead, and you don't mind any of the other criteria I just mentioned, then these complete end-to-end solutions are the solutions for you. And so where you can use complete end-to-end solutions, we would recommend that for most advertisers. However, sometimes you do have hard business constraints. So for example, let's say you're working agency side and the client gives you a hard business constraint. So let's say they tell you, you can only target our ads to, let's say, females aged between 25 to 44 who are interested in health and fitness, let's say. So that's an example of a hard business constraint. So you must adhere, if you have to adhere to that hard business constraint, then you can't use an automated end-to-end solutions because that would automate over your hard business constraint. Or let's say the client gives you a placement constraint. Let's say they say to you, we can only show our ads on Instagram, nowhere else, for whatever reason. Then again, you can't use a complete end-to-end solution because again, in this case, the automation would automate across all placements. And so you can't use a complete end-to-end solution. So in those scenarios where you do have a hard business constraint, in this case, you'll need to make use of the second category, which is single-step solutions. So here, with single-step solutions, these allow you to manually define parts of your campaign where you do have the constraints and then automate every other part around it. So let's say, for example, that that scenario I presented earlier where let's say you have a client and they said to you, you can only target females aged between 25 and 44 who are interested in health and fitness. So in that scenario, you have to manually define the audience portion of the campaign, but every other part where there's no hard business constraint, you can automate these. So manually define, the parts where you do have a hard constraint, and then use single-step solutions to automate every other part around it. Conversely, let's say if it was placements, let's say you've been given a hard business constraint, you can only show ads on Instagram, then in that case, you have to manually define your placements, but then everything around it, audiences, budget, creative, destination, you can automate using single-step solutions. So trust that makes sense. So again, for most advertisers, if your goal is just to drive sales, just to drive app events, or just to drive leads, and you're not concerned about things like the audience composition, where the ads are being shown, etc., then this is a solution for you. But if you have been given hard business constraints that you have to adhere to, then you probably have to use single-step solutions so you can manually define your hard constraint and then automate everything else around it. So trust that makes sense. So that was an overview of the entire suite of Meta Advantage solutions. Today's training is going to zero in just on the complete end-to-end solutions only, which are our Advantage Plus sales campaigns, Advantage Plus app campaigns, and Advantage Plus leads campaigns. Once again, as the name suggests, consider using these solutions. Again, if your goal is to just drive sales, just drive some kind of app event, app conversion, and so if you want to just drive leads and you have no hard business constraints. Also note, the observant amongst you will also note that Advantage Plus shopping campaigns are now called Advantage Plus sales campaigns, which I think is a better reflection of the intention behind this. And I've mentioned, for those of you who've been in my other trainings before, I've mentioned that I always felt the Advantage Plus shopping campaign name was kind of a misnomer because it inferred that you kind of had to be in kind of shopping or e-commerce, which wasn't necessarily the case. As long as you had some kind of purchase conversion event, whether you were e-com or not, you could run an Advantage Plus shopping campaign, whereas now this is more clear. So as long as you want driving sales, this is good to go. So there. If you are interested in learning more about the single step solutions, we're not going to cover them today, but if you are learning more about these, there is a Meta Blueprint course, a separate course called Optimize Your Campaign with Meta Advantage. So be sure to enroll in that campaign in that course via the Blueprint website if you're interested in that. So again, the name of that one was called Optimize Your Campaign with Meta Advantage. So that in that course, we go into depth on each of these single step automations and what they mean and when you would use them. Okay, so with that overview, let's take a bit of a closer look at the 3 complete end-to-end campaign solutions available to you. Again, that's Advantage Plus sales campaigns, Advantage Plus app campaigns, and Advantage Plus leads campaigns. We're going to review what's changing. We're going to look at the benefits these solutions provide and also how they work. So this experience is in the process of being rolled out to all advertisers. So if you're not seeing this just yet, so if you're in Ads Manager and you're going through your campaign creation, and you're not seeing Advantage Plus sales, Advantage Plus app campaigns, Advantage Plus leads campaigns just yet, just hold tight, keep an eye out. It is being rolled out globally. All right, first, let's do a quick intro starting with the sales objective. So for campaigns with a sales objective, so, in your campaign creation flow, when you're creating your campaign shell and you're choosing a campaign objective, you're choosing sales. Here, what happened was you used to have to choose as soon as you picked sales, you would then be presented with a dialogue that would give you a choice. Do you want to create an automated Advantage Plus shopping campaign, or do you want to create a manual sales campaign? Which one do you want to do? Now, when you do this, so now with the new streamlined setup, when you select sales, you are automatically going to be opted into the new Advantage Plus sales campaign format. So it's automatically opted in. So this is what you'll see. So no more choice to manual. Alternatively, the other way you might see the Advantage Plus sales campaign format is if you have an existing Advantage Plus shopping campaign and then you choose to duplicate that campaign. So if you choose to duplicate an Advantage Plus shopping campaign, you'll then be presented with an option to basically convert it into an Advantage Plus sales campaign. So we're going to talk in a bit more depth about all of this a little bit later on, but I just want to give you the heads up. That's the other time you'll see it. All right, next let's move on to the app promotion objective. So similar to the sales campaign, now when you're creating a new campaign from scratch, if you were to choose app promotion, then again, the next choice that you'll get, what you used to get was a choice between, do you want to create an automated Advantage Plus app campaign, or do you want to create a manual campaign? So now that dialogue is gone. You're automatically going to be opted in to the Advantage Plus app fully automated campaign solution. And again, similarly, if you were to duplicate an existing app promotion campaign, so if you already got one running and you duplicate it, you'll now be given the choice. Basically, you'll be shown a dialogue saying, do you want to convert this to a Advantage Plus app campaign? So you'll see that again. And again, we'll go into a bit more detail about that shortly. And then finally, with the last format, this is a brand new leads campaign experience. So there was no prior Advantage Plus leads equivalent. So right now, this is a new format. So if you, in the campaign creation flow, choose leads as your objective, you'll now automatically be opted into this new Advantage Plus leads campaign format. And so when you create a new campaign, you'll be automatically opted into this. Again, there was no equivalent of this before. And so this is a new experience. Basically brings the leads, objective into line with the sales and the app objectives. And once again, if you already had an existing leads campaign and you decide to duplicate that campaign, then you might also see the next screen which will ask you, do you want to convert that to an Advantage Plus Leads campaign? And again, we'll talk about upgrading in a moment. And so with that, we have covered a little bit of ground already. So it's time to see how well you've done taking all that in. So have a read of this question. Let me give you a minute. Have a read of this question and let me know your best answer out of A, B, C, or D. Let me know in the Q&A. Let me give you 1 minute. Over to you. Sorry, I just realized you should say choose the correct answers. Which campaign objectives are available in the new Streamline Logic? Choose the correct answers, not one answer. Choose all that are correct. Couple more seconds to go. All right, let's give another 5 seconds. Lots of answers coming through. Thank you to everyone who's answering. Lots of participation today. Thank you. And thank you to the now 446 of you online for this training. So thank you for jumping on. And let's close it there. Lots and lots of answers coming through. I'm seeing the vast majority of you have nailed it. And yes, the vast majority of you are saying A, B, and D, and that is absolutely correct. The campaign objectives that are available now in the new Streamline experience are Advantage Plus sales campaigns, Advantage Plus app campaigns, Advantage Plus leads campaigns. So well done to everyone who answered A, B, and D. Okay, so we've just done a quick intro. So that was just a quick intro, quick overview of the new Advantage Plus campaign formats. Again, that's the Advantage Plus sales, Advantage Plus app, and Advantage Plus leads campaigns. Let's now talk about setting up these campaigns in Ads Manager. So let's begin with setting up a campaign from scratch. Probably many of you who are media buyers, you're very familiar with this. When you go to the in Ads Manager, the campaigns tab, you'll see that very familiar create button. So click on the create button to create your new campaign shell. And then for your campaign objective, here is where you select either leads or app promotion or sales, depending on whichever goal it is that you have, and then click continue. And so next, what you'll see is this screen, but what you'll see, which is new now, for those of you who have this functionality rolled out to your region, is you'll see this thing on the right-hand side, a campaign score. And so you'll see that when you first create the campaign shell, you'll see this Advantage Plus sales campaign status as on. And so here, this is defaulted to on when you create. And so what that means is that you are opted into all of the automation features that are proven to drive best performance. And so just note that this is the state of your campaign. This isn't a toggle. So this is something, it's not something you turn on and off here. It's just showing you the state of your campaign as it is. Next, you may also see a campaign score. And so this is a score from 1 to 100 that predicts how optimized your campaign is before you publish it. So if your score is less than 100, you might also see some recommended actions underneath that if you take those actions, you can improve your score. After this, there are some further steps to follow in Ads Manager to finish setting up your campaign, which we're going to talk about in a moment. And so that was just the process of setting up new campaigns from scratch. There are more settings which we'll talk about in a moment, but recall, before we talk about the other settings, there's another way that you might see the new Advantage Plus app, sales app or leads experience, and that's if you duplicate an existing campaign. So let's quickly talk about this scenario as well. So if you were to duplicate an existing Advantage Plus shopping campaign or an existing app promotion campaign or an existing leads campaign, you'll see this dialog pop up. And so here you'll see an option for you to duplicate with some recommended adjustments, or you can duplicate it with your current settings as they were. And so if you do agree to duplicate with the recommended adjustments, this will turn Advantage Plus on and upgrade your campaign to the new streamlined format. So your updated campaign setup will show with Advantage Plus status as on. In fact, let me go back a screen. So that means your new duplicated campaign will now be part of the new streamlined setup, and you'll have Advantage Plus sales campaign turned on. That's if you choose this, duplicate with recommended adjustments. If you say duplicate with current settings, then your existing campaign settings will remain unchanged, but the updated campaign setup interface will show with Advantage Plus status as off. So just note that. And so you'll have the opportunity to review these adjustments. You can still, even if it's off, you can still change the settings if you want to basically do what you can to turn the status back on. All right, so by now you'll hopefully have noticed that one of the big changes with these new Advantage Plus campaign end-to-end solutions is that Advantage Plus status. And so let's now talk about this Advantage Plus campaign status in a little bit more detail. And so when a campaign is set up to use all of the Advantage AI optimization tools possible, then the Advantage Plus status indicator will be on for your campaign. And so you'll see this. And so this again is the default status for Advantage Plus sales, app, and leads campaigns at creation. Then if you were to then apply certain constraints, like let's say you apply certain constraints to your budget, certain constraints to your audience, certain constraints to your placements, then you might see your Advantage Plus status turning to off, which has the potential to negatively impact your campaign performance. So Ads Manager, so if that happens, then Ads Manager will then provide a real-time message giving you guidance just to let you know that that's happening. And so giving you some instructions on, if you wanted to make sure that the campaign status remains on. It's recommended to only use campaign constraints where necessary. So again, if you've been given a hard business constraint. And so again, let's say that the brand, the client that you're working with, they've told you you can only target ads for us you can only target females aged between 25 and 44 interested in health and fitness, let's say. Then in that case, then you're given no choice. So you then have to put an audience constraint in, a hard business constraint. And then if you do that, then you'll see the Advantage Plus sales campaign status will turn off. A campaign is considered to be an Advantage Plus on status when the following criteria is met. Number one, when your Advantage Plus campaign budget is turned on. So if you've got Advantage Plus campaign budget turned on, that's one of the criteria. The second criteria is that at least one ad set in your campaign has to have Advantage Plus audiences turned on. So in other words, fully automated audiences. And then the other criteria, the third criteria, is you have to have Advantage Plus placements turned on for all ad sets. So in other words, you can't use manual placements. And so in summary, the three settings that can affect your Advantage Plus campaign status are in relation to budget, audiences, and placements. And so because of this, let's talk about each of these three settings in a little bit more detail. So let's start by looking at how budget settings can affect your Advantage Plus campaign status. So here we see an example on the left of a sales campaign that has Advantage Plus sales campaign status is on. And so this means that they're using Advantage Plus campaign budget, and they're using Advantage Plus audiences, at least in one ad set, and they're using Advantage Plus placements. In addition, this campaign has yet another recommendation. So here's an example of when the system might give you a recommendation that can help you to further improve your campaign score. So even though you might have Advantage Plus sales campaign statuses on, there may still yet be other things you can do to improve your campaign score. So if that's the case, then you'll see what that is here. On the right, however, here's an example of a campaign that has the Advantage Plus sales campaign status as off. And so in this example, this advertiser has fixed their budget at the ad set level somewhere in this campaign. So therefore, it doesn't allow for complete budget automation. And so the recommendation for this campaign is given here. So here, if you use campaign budget instead, again, using campaign automation at the campaign level, that could help them further improve their results. And so with that, that's budget settings. Let's have a look at some other budget settings while we're on the topic of budget. And so once again, Advantage Plus campaign budget needs to remain on for all ad sets to keep Advantage Plus campaign status on. And so if you're unfamiliar with that, for those of you who've been on my other trainings, you'll know that Advantage Plus campaign budget, what it does is it allows you to set your budget at the campaign level and then leave it up to the system to figure out in real time which ad set is essentially winning. And so we used to have a saying in agency, feed your winners and starve your losers. And so what Advantage Campaign Budget does is if you set your budget at the campaign level, you're basically letting the system automate and figure out in real time which ad sets within this campaign are winning. And then in real time, it would skew your budget towards your winning ad sets. And so here is an example of a campaign that has Advantage Plus status on for budget because they're using Advantage Campaign Budget and they've got a daily budget of 100 USD. So let's say this campaign had 3 ad sets, then with this setting, you're basically leaving it up to the system to figure out in real time which of those 3 ad sets should be getting the budget at any given moment. On the right-hand side, though, we have an example of a campaign that has the Advantage Plus status as off. So here, instead of using Advantage Campaign Budget, what this advertiser is doing is using ad set level budgets, which are basically you're having to manually hard code your budget at the ad set level. And so here, if you're doing that, if you're manually essentially hard coding budgets at the ad set level, you may inadvertently be pricing yourself into more expensive ads. And so this is the reason why you'll have a lower score, essentially. And so here's a suggestion on how you could improve it. And so here, the recommendation is to use the campaign budget instead, which will give you this result. It will lower your cost per result, help you get more conversions at a lower cost per conversion. So again, the recommendation is there to use campaign budget automation instead of manually setting budgets at the ad set level. Okay, so that was the first setting or the first constraint that if you actually put constraints, it can affect your Advantage Plus campaign status. Now let's look at the second setting that can affect your Advantage Plus campaign status, and that is audiences. And so recall with the meta ads hierarchy, we define audiences at the ad set level. So every ad set will require you to define an audience. And so here's a screenshot of what the audience selection screen looks like, again at the ad set level. And here for these audiences, we can see that we have Advantage Plus turned on. And so here, from these settings, we can see that this advertiser has just chosen to use broad targeting, essentially no targeting. All they've done is targeted the United States, and that's it. So no other definition. So no age, no gender, no interests, no behaviors, no audiences, basically just target everybody in the United States. And so this is an example of what we call broad targeting, or maybe you might even call it no targeting. And counterintuitively, this actually works best with Meta's AI. So if you start adding constraints, if you start, again, I'm maybe showing my age, but back in the day, best practice used to be hyper targeting very, very granular audiences. And so right now, that is actually no longer best practice. That's actually worst practice because that works against the AI. So here, if you were to do this, this actually works better with the AI. In fact, one of the ways I kind of like to think about it is if you broad target like this, so this advertiser is targeting everybody in the United States, what you're doing is you're basically saying to the system, you have the entire pool of the United States to choose from, and then within that pool, the system knows who is in market for what you're selling. Again, assuming this is an Advantage Plus sales campaign, the system knows who is in market for what you're selling. Actually, I should preface that with the better that you can train the system on your products, i.e. the better your product catalog, the better your ads, the better your landing pages, the better you can train the system on exactly what it is you're selling. So the better the system knows what it is you're selling, then the system can then know, oh, well, now that I know what it is you're selling or what you're offering, I can now determine from, through AI, I can determine who is in market for what you're selling. So let me go after them. Don't put any, in my language, my thinking, don't put handcuffs on the algorithm. So let the system go after who it knows is in market for what you're selling. And so that's the advantage of doing broad targeting like this advertiser right here. And so here, again, at least one ad set in your campaign needs to have Advantage Plus audiences on. At least one for the whole campaign to have Advantage Plus status as on. And so even though you have Advantage Plus on, there are small small limited constraints that you can have a say in that won't affect your Advantage Plus status. And so, for example, one of the controls you can put on is you can set a minimum age. So, for example, let's say you're advertising alcohol in Sweden. So the minimum age to that you're able to sell alcohol or able to show ads for alcohol in Sweden is 25 years old. And so, for example, you can set a minimum age of 25 years old. So, I want to target everyone in Sweden, but the minimum age has to be 25 years old. And so that's to adhere to, Meta's advertising standards and also Swedish law. And so in this case, you can do that. You can set a minimum age and you will still retain Advantage Plus status as on. So you can still set minimum ages. You can add custom audience exclusions. So let's say there's an audience you don't want to see your ad. So let's say you're putting out a prospecting campaign only, where you're looking to acquire new customers. You don't want any of your existing customers to see these ads. You can add a custom audience of your existing customers and exclude them from your targeting, and you'll still retain Advantage Plus status as on. As you can see here, you can add locations. Like we only want to target everyone in the US. You can add languages. We only want to target people who speak whatever it is, whose default language is set to Swedish. Whatever it is, you can set languages, you can set locations as your targets, and that will still retain Advantage Plus status as on. And also, some of you are using account level audiences controls. So, under advertising settings in Ads Manager, you have account level audience controls. So some of you are using those settings, so you can still make use of your account level audience settings, and your Advantage Plus status will still remain as on. So there are limited constraints you can use that won't turn off Advantage. So just make note of that. And so here on the right is an example of an ad set that has the Advantage Plus status as off. So in this particular case, they're not using Advantage Plus audiences. So probably in this particular case, we can't see what they've done. But they're probably using some kind of, let's say, a detailed targeting audience. So they're probably saying something like, show our ads only to, again, let's say females aged between 25 and 44, interested in health and fitness, living in the US, let's say. And so because of that, it's a hard business constraint. So now Advantage Plus is set to off. And so here, in this case, Ads Manager again will show you some kind of guidance on how you could turn Advantage Plus status back on if you were to do this. So here, switching to Advantage Plus audiences will help you to turn Advantage Plus status as on. And then if you do that, here's the result. You would lower your cost per result by 33%. Likely you would increase your conversions by 33%. Note, regarding audiences, one option that you do have, if you wanted to help the algorithm, like if you wanted to actually, I like to think of it giving the algorithm a head start, what you can do is you can add suggestions. And so here, you can supply a suggestion which the algorithm, which the system will use as part of guidance for its targeting. And so here you can say, even though I'm happy to target everybody in the US, so broad target, my suggestion is that you would target people aged between, whatever it is, females aged between 25 and 44 who are interested in fashion, maybe living in these postcodes, whatever the case is. You can suggest an audience which can be like a head start for the system. So it doesn't mean that the system must only target that audience. So it can use your suggestion as part of its guidance, but it's not beholden only to that audience that you suggest. So here you can do this. You can add suggestions. Further, you can even include saved audiences. So that could help. Like if you've got first-party data, then you can upload a custom audience of, for example, I don't know, like let's say a lookalike of your existing customers. So you could create a lookalike audience and use a lookalike audience of your existing customers potentially as part of the suggestion base. But again, remember, if you use a suggestion, the system will treat it as a suggestion, but it doesn't have to use it. So if the system sees that there are people outside of your suggestion that are in market for what you're selling, it's still going to go for those people. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay. Also, if you start actually, like still talking about audiences, if you start actually beginning to define specific criteria, so here, let's say, you actually do start saying, all right, well, I do want to target these particular ages. I do want to target these particular genders, let's say. Then once you start that action, all right, I want to start, let's say I do want to target females only, then that same suggestion box is going to come up. Do you want to use, are you telling me, Meta's asking you, are you telling me you only want to target women? Or are you telling me you would like me to use females as a suggestion? But again, if there's others who are not female who are in market, you're still giving me permission to go after them. And so again, as long as you keep suggestions, this checkbox enabled, you'll retain Advantage Plus on. If you remove this checkbox, use a suggestion, that means you're telling Meta, no, I only want you to target women. I don't want you to target anyone outside of that. And so therefore, that's now a hard business constraint, and then Advantage Plus will be turned off. And so here's an example of that. So here in this case, almost the same audiences. On the left, we have females as a suggestion. Advantage Plus is on. But here we have females as a hard business constraint. So not a suggestion. This is a directive. And so now Advantage Plus is turned off. Finally, let's look at the third setting that can affect your Advantage Plus campaign status. So as you may already know, placements are where you allow your ads to appear across the Meta ads ecosystem. So essentially, placements are kind of like, I like to think of them as the inventory that's available across Meta. So in the Meta ads hierarchy, placements are also defined at the ad set level. And so here's a screenshot of what the placements section looks like. And so in order to keep the Advantage Plus status as on for placements, Advantage Plus placements should be left on. So essentially, with Advantage Plus placements, you're saying to Meta, you pick where the best placement is that can help me drive more results at a lower cost per result. And so in this screenshot in front of you, we are using the default settings. So we haven't chosen any specific placement settings manually. We've just let the system decide, and we just use the default setting. Advantage settings are applied. So therefore, Advantage Plus is on. On the right, though, here's an example of where we might have constraints. So here, for example, this is an example of an advertiser who's using manual placements. So in this advertiser, kind of the opposite of what we said earlier. So this advertiser is not showing ads on Instagram. So maybe they've been given a directive by the brand. You can't show our ads on Instagram. Happy for our ads to be on Facebook. Happy for our ads to be on Messenger, and happy for our ads to show on a few audience network placements, on a limited number of audience network placements. So these are manual placement settings. And so in this particular case, because this advertiser is using manual placement settings, here Advantage Plus status is set to off for placements. Also, once you do this, you can see the guidance again from the system. So Ads Manager is showing a message stating that if you were to include all placements, so again, if you go to Advantage Plus placements, automated placements, that could improve performance. So you'll get that guidance again. Before we move on, it is worth highlighting that there are absolutely valid times where you must use hard business constraints. They do exist. And so that will mean, by definition, that Advantage Plus status will be off. And so, for example, I just mentioned earlier, if you're advertising alcohol in Sweden, you must advertise to people aged 25 or older. Like minimum age has to be 25. And so that's a hard business constraint. Now, in that particular case, that still works within the Advantage Plus, limitations. So you can still retain Advantage Plus status on, but there could be others. Like maybe, again, you're given that hard business constraint by the brand. We can only show our ads to females aged 25 to 44 who are interested in health and fitness, who live in these states, let's say. And so that is a hard business constraint, and that is a very valid reason why you just can't have a fully automated campaign. There are reasons when that happens. And so therefore, manual features, manual controls, they will remain available should you need them. And so, however, again, for all the reasons we mentioned earlier, where you don't have hard business constraints, we do recommend using Advantage Plus, having the Advantage Plus statuses on, again, to allow the AI to drive more results for you at a lower cost per result. And so with that, we come to our next knowledge check of the afternoon. So take a bit of a longer read, take a minute and a half on this one, have a read of this, and let me know your best answer out of A, B, or C. A minute and a half in the Q&A box. Let me know the best answer in the Q&A box. A minute and a half, over to you. All right, looks like you all don't need a minute and a half. I can see all of your answers coming through, and all of you have done a phenomenal job of listening. You all answered C, which is quite astonishing. And so the answer absolutely is C. So to ensure, to do basically to ensure that you're retaining Advantage Plus status is on, absolutely the answer C. As much as you can, just use the default automated settings for placements, for budget, and for audience to automatically find the best opportunities for your campaign. Okay, so trust all of this is making sense. We're about to go to Q&A, but before we do, we actually already have some frequently asked questions. So we're going to go through these frequently asked questions, which may address some of the questions. I can see questions going in the Q&A right now. It may address some of these questions. It may preempt some of your questions. So let's talk through a few frequently asked questions that advertisers have already asked about this. All right, question number one. Will I see the same performance again if I was to use these new Advantage Plus sales campaigns or Advantage Plus app campaigns compared to the older, automated Advantage, automated app promotion campaigns and the older Advantage Plus shopping campaigns? And so a study by Meta last year found that for both app promotion campaigns and sales campaigns, that this test was conducted across verticals and across regions just to compare the performance of the old version versus the new. Basically, the test found that the campaigns basically have comparable performance. So whatever results you were getting before in the prior app promotion, assuming you were using fully automated settings, and same with Advantage Plus shopping campaigns, you're basically going to see basically comparable sales in the new streamlined version. So there shouldn't be any hesitation to move across if you're getting good results with the older format. Again, there was no prior fully automated lead solutions previously, so we don't have any comparison data for the Advantage Plus leads campaign format. Question number two, is Meta now automating all of my campaigns or taking away controls? And so the answer to this is no. You are still going to have access to existing manual controls for those cases where you do have hard business constraints that you must adhere to, because we recognize that we are given those sometimes by brands, and so we have to adhere to those. So again, just know that if you are given those hard business constraints, in fact, you can even approach this at the media planning stage. So when those media planning conversations are being had, as soon as you've been handed a hard business constraint, you can immediately let the brand know, let the client know, we can do this. However, the consequence of doing this is we're not going to be using the full power of automation. So just know there could be a ROI cost to you if we do this. So just have that conversation, even well before media buying gets involved. Again, keep in mind that there are limited constraints that you can still exercise that will keep your Advantage Plus status on. And so that's things like targeting a particular location. You can still do that. Again, we mentioned you can target a minimum age. You can exclude custom audiences if you need to. And you can target only certain languages, and you can still exercise all these constraints and still keep your Advantage Plus statuses on. So again, they are limited, but there are some controls that are available still. Question number three, can I further improve my campaign performance even over and above the automation we've just talked about? Well, you can, and we didn't really mention these today. They're a bit more topic for our wider Meta Advantage, optimize your campaign performance with Meta Advantage course. So we talk more about these then. But in addition to the settings that we talked about, the default settings, there are some additional settings which you can make use of if you want to. You don't have to. It's not going to affect your status, but if you do make use of it, you might actually be able to drive further performance. So number one is making use of Advantage Plus Creative. So here is where you supply the system with multiple images, multiple videos, let's say, lots of different headlines and text, descriptions, calls to action, all of that. And then the system can also help you mix and match, basically, to find the best combination. And so you can try Advantage Plus Creative. Number two is Advantage Plus Catalog, where if you have a catalog, if you're an e-com advertiser, or maybe even in some of those other verticals that have catalogs like travel, like real estate, then this will help you to automate your catalog at scale. So rather than manually creating ads at the ad set level, you can automate your catalog at scale. So that can help. And then finally, Advantage Plus Destination. So for those of you who are working with brands that have multiple conversion properties, so maybe people prospects have a chance to convert on your website, or they have a chance to convert on your iOS or Android app, let's say, or they have a chance to convert on your Facebook shop or Instagram shop, let's say. So if you're in that luxurious position where you actually have multiple presences and multiple properties, and there's many different ways that people could convert, then if you choose Advantage Plus Destination, what this will do is you're giving the system permission to figure out in real time for this particular user, would they have a higher propensity to convert on your website? If so, I'll send them to your website. Or do they have a higher propensity to convert on your app? If so, I'll send them to your app. Or do they have a higher propensity to convert on your Facebook shop or Instagram shop? And if so, I'll send them to your Facebook or Instagram shop. So if you are in that position where you have multiple properties, then see if, or even run a test and see if this can squeeze out, a few extra percentage points of conversion rate for you. All right, next question. I used to be able to include 150 ads in Advantage Plus shopping campaigns. Now I'm only able to use 50 ads in the Advantage Plus sales campaign. What gives? And so for those of you who are asking this question, very, very, very observant. And so and this is true. So with the new Advantage Plus sales campaign, one of the big differences between this and Advantage Plus shopping campaigns is you can only have 50 ads per ad set. So it's important to note that difference. However, the other big difference though is with Advantage Plus shopping campaigns, for those of you who have been using it, you'll know you can only have one ad set per campaign. Whereas now with the Advantage Plus sales campaign, you can have as many ad sets per campaign as you want. And so actually with the new Advantage Plus sales campaign, across all of your ad sets, you can have far more than 150 ads now. So this will now give you, I guess, some of the granularity that you might be after. So let's say you're an e-com advertiser, large catalog, lots of product sets. Now you can have multiple ad sets, lots of product sets, and then in real time using Advantage Campaign Budget, let the system figure out, which of your product sets is firing, and in real time skew budget there. So much more flexibility now, much more options now open up for you for optimizing, for testing, etc. So big new advantage of Advantage Plus sales campaigns. All right, next question. Advantage Plus shopping campaigns used to have an existing customer budget cap feature, which the Advantage Plus sales campaign does not. What can I do now? So hopefully there's some of you who are asking this question in Q&A. I've seen lots of questions flying through already. This is also correct. So the Advantage Plus shopping campaign format used to have a setting. It was called the existing customer budget cap. And so what you could do is for any given budget for your Advantage Plus shopping campaign, you could say, you know what, I only want, whatever it is, I only want 30% of my budget going to existing customers. So therefore I want 70% of my budget on this campaign going to prospecting, going to finding new customers. So you used to be able to do that. So why can't we do that now with our Advantage Plus sales campaign? Well, the difference now is kind of following on from what I mentioned earlier. In fact, let me go back. Is now with Advantage Plus sales campaign, the difference is now you can have multiple ad sets per campaign. And so now, remembering that with the Advantage Plus shopping campaign format, there was only one campaign. So that's why you had to have that setting. And so in the one campaign, you had to have a setting that you would tell Meta, do I want all of this campaign to be prospecting? Do I want some of the campaign to be you had to tell Meta specifically. So now what you can do is you can just set up two ad sets. So you can have one ad set being your prospecting audience and one ad set being your retargeting audience. And so basically, now it's your choice. So if you set up one ad set to be your prospecting, one ad set being your retargeting, now the choice is yours. Do you want to, at the manual ad set level, do you want to manually define it and say, I want to fix 70% of my daily budget to go to my prospecting, 30% to go to retargeting? Or do I want to set it at the campaign level and let Meta